The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Welcome to it Wednesdays here. It's Hail Varsity. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Justice Rhodey. Hope you do it all right. Gear it up towards Nebraska, USC. Husker hoops in action as well. Mike Babcock going to be with us here in about 20 minutes. We'll talk with Babbers, get his take on the weekend ahead. Some recruiting thoughts as it could be the year of the flip for the Big Red. Some exciting names are out there. We'll dive into that in a little bit. Numbers to get in, 489-1240, 489-1240. 800-825-5865 in hour two. Evan Bland will get things going at 5 o'clock. Papa Sirles going to join us. Jeremiah Sirles checks in. His thoughts on the state of Husker Nation. And then a Jock Doc as we'll get our starting five shout-outs here in a moment. Always invited to subscribe and watch the show. Hail Varsity YouTube channel, Hail Varsity Radio. Twitter at HVarsity Radio. Find me, Chris Schmidt, on Twitter at Schmidt_radio, at Herbal Essence for Elijah, at Justice Rhodey for Justice. And as always, can check out the podcast page. Search Hail Varsity Radio, Spotify, iTunes, and Google Play. We've talked a lot about Dana Holgorsen and the Nebraska offense. What is likely? What are your expectations for Saturday with this offense and managing those expectations? So let me just ask this simple question for you. As a Nebraska fan, whether you're going out there, and many Big Red fans are going out in droves, nice weather, mid-November, little California sunshine, I totally get it. But are you at the point right now where there's some hope and optimism where, hey, this could turn out all right? Or are you, hate to go here, but fearing the worst? The worst being it's still a sputtering offense because it is so new between personnel and play caller. Is it going to be another ball game that, and I don't think this is an instance, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't see this as an Indiana instance where Nebraska gets drilled by 4 touchdowns. If USC does that to Nebraska, that'd be news for USC and Lincoln Riley. As much heat as he's taken, as disinterested as he seems to be in coaching college football right now. So, my expectations, and we'll get a little deeper into it, is to go have a hard-fought game. The thing that intrigues me, as tough as it's been for Nebraska in one-score ball games, fellas, USC's been up. And they've been up large on some teams. They've been up on Penn State by 2 touchdowns, 17-3 at one point. USC's been up on Minnesota where they couldn't close the deal. USC was up on Michigan on the road. They have trouble closing. And they don't really have trouble closing at home, but they have been problematic there. I'm just wondering if this is a situation where Nebraska can grind it out, hang around, and let USC, pull a USC and just not be as detailed as they need to be.
The question to me, I've said it plenty of times before, USC can be Jekyll and Hyde. Nebraska can be too. Which version
very fitting mid-November matchup.
Yeah, which version of each team are you going to get? Because both these coaches, they're looking for a spark. Lincoln Riley's going to the backup. He's going to the bullpen trying to get a spark from the backup quarterback, which you see it a lot in football, NFL, college, high school. Whenever you get that quarterback switch, you do tend to get a little bit of extra oomph from your offense because they got that new guy behind center, a new reason to have confidence. Flip it around, Nebraska, they're looking for a massive spark. That's why you bring in Dana Holgorsen. What can those guys bring? Can they get the best version of each team out? Because you look at it, what USC has essentially been is they've put their best foot forward at home. They have not put their best foot forward on the road. Now, as I look at ticket prices at USC. I don't know what the care level from USC fans is for this team anymore. So is it a home field advantage from USC, or is it just the lack of travel? Why do they play best at home? I don't know. But 48-0 against Utah State at home. You lose on the road at Michigan. 38-21 against Wisconsin at home. You lose at Minnesota. At Penn State, you have the Nittany Lions on the ropes, a very good team. You end up losing 33-30 in overtime. You go out to Maryland and lose 42-20. You beat Rutgers whenever you return back home.
You had a chance to put Maryland away. You had a chance to put Penn State away at home.
But it's a far cry from what they've been at home.
No, and even the Wisconsin game, Bucky was pounding them 21-10 at halftime, and they score 18 unanswered. So there was a little bit of a rally there, but it's a new quarterback for them. And to be honest, man, Lincoln Riley's just rolling the dice and picking a pass play. I mean, the position he put Miller Moss in, throwing so many passes
against Washington
per game,
particularly against Washington.
And they got back in that game running the football. And then they said, "Oh, we're going to throw the football." So, if Harburg goes, and we still don't know. I don't even know that we'll know tomorrow from Rule with Dylan's status update. I would anticipate, Dylan's got some work in. You're going to keep it vague and keep USC guessing.
Yeah, Dylan's making the trip out.
Yeah.
In what capacity? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. He's sitting next to me in his sweats. That might be it. But I'm anxious. If it is Harburg, you've obviously got the run element, the zone read element, and it'd be nice to see him used to throw the football for more than a trick play.
Well, think about the rough spot USC's defense is in right now. Like Lynn, the defensive coordinator, think about the spot that he's in this week. What's Nebraska's offense going to look like on Saturday?
Don't know.
There's so many variables. Well, who's playing quarterback?
Good question.
Well, what's Dana putting into the offense? What's Dana bringing with him? What's he throwing out the door? That guy's got his hands full this week. That's a tough place. That's an unenviable job this week to be game planning for a team that you don't even know who the quarterback is, and it's a massive stylistic difference between Harburg and Raiola. Combine it with the fact that there's a stylistic difference between Satterfield and Holgorsen. You don't know what Holgorsen's offense is going to look like with Nebraska, especially considering you don't know who's going to be behind quarterback. Like, oof. That's a tough spot to be in. You know
what I do anticipate, though? I mean, you've got some to-dos if you're Dana Holgorsen, even if it's been a little less than 2 weeks that you've been here. You've combed over film. You've checked out personnel. You've talked to your guys with what they like and what they're good at. You call some option routes. Let them get open. You have a potential in a mobile quarterback in Harburg right there. But how about tempo? And I'm not asking to go 2-minute drill the whole time in Ode to the Pirate, but just some tempo, some rhythm. Get the guys comfortable, get the guys confident in what they're doing. And you're not changing the language, you're not changing the playbook, but you are going to change probably some rhythm, right? And that's one thing Nebraska has had a hard time doing, and that is getting into rhythm. And that rhythm of offense where you're putting plays together, and it's been herky-jerky. 1 minute you're running to win inside the red zone against Ohio State. The next minute against UCLA, you're chucking it 3 times after running the football down to the 5. So give the guys on offense a little consistency, figure out a game plan that's going to work, go get some points, be confident, let your defense breathe for just a minute, and don't make them allow 14 or less. If this thing could be a 27-24, and I'm not saying I'd put money down to put 24 points up for Nebraska, but it's going to need to be that because USC, with their mobile quarterback, with their athletes, with their run game, we haven't even talked turnovers, is going to be a handful. They've been a team that puts up 30 points on a Penn State defense, pretty good offense. Again, that's with the former quarterback, though. Who's on the horn?
We got Paul in Lincoln.
All right, Paul, thanks for calling. Go ahead.
Hey, guys, comment and question. The comment, I'm praying that Coach White puts a lot of pressure on this sophomore quarterback for USC. Let's get some blitzes in there. And the question for you, do we know much about Kalen? Is he going to possibly be the good passing quarterback if we don't have Raiola?
I think the way Rule talked on Monday, Paul, is that Danny's probably an option. I don't know that you throw him to the Wolves out in Hollywood against that USC front from the get-go. But if Harburg is your starter and it's just not going and you need to throw the football, Kalen, I would be surprised if Kalen doesn't travel. I would be surprised if they don't take all three quarterbacks. That's assuming Dylan is able to at least travel and suit up. If he's not able to travel and suit up, then it is going to be Harburg, it is going to be Kalen, it's going to be Gramstad.
Let's go Big Red.
We'll see. You heading out or no?
No, I'm a local boy.
I get it. I get it. I mean, there's a lot of crazies, and I love them, that are going out to L.A.
You look at me as you say that.
I am.
But
Paul,
to tell the whole story, I do have a brother, sister-in-law, and all their family going out because one of the players is their clan.
Oh, cool. Good enough. That's awesome.
So there'll be a couple dozen probably shooting and shouting and doing a bunch of fun things out there.
All right, Paul. Appreciate the call. Thanks for listening. 489-1240 to get in. 800-825-5865. What are you banking on? 20,000
Husker fans
of you and your Nebraska pals?
Probably say that's fair. There's a decent chunk of people. I think the people that were in the wait and see mode with this team before they booked their trip might not make it out, but I think there's plenty of people who booked their trip to LA preseason looking, ooh, California weather in November. That sounds nice. The more and more people I talk to this week, and the longer this week goes on, you're hearing a lot of people going out. So we'll see.
I think you're going to see that California two-step moving forward with Nebraska and either SC or UCLA. You're going to get a California game in November, and you're going to get a California team in Lincoln in November, or a West Coast team. Maybe it's Washington, maybe it's Oregon, but I'm liking it. It's going to be all right. The throwback cuties of 1972, I do not know if they're going to go with the single bar face masks or not. As part of the tribute.
I don't think they're not legal. Yeah.
But
they should be.
I think that'd be a way to do it. Even kickers don't wear just the two Mark Duper tributes. Jeff is in the stream. Our starting five shout-outs. Mike from Cali getting in. Your mama is back and said made a pot roast with potatoes and carrots for you boys. You know how good pot roast sounds right now? It sounds amazing.
'Tis the season for a good pot roast.
Oh, it is. Roger is in. Roger, good to have you. Black Hills Brennan checks in from the Black Hills. Good to have Black Hills Brennan. Bruce from Spearfish is in. QB1 Ace says hello. We should fool them with the 41 flashback reverse. Gramstad and Lloyd are both number 19. Bring in Gramstad for one play. They'll never know the difference. I think they would, because Lloyd is a speed demon.
I was going to say, give Ace here a headset. Put him on play calling duties on Saturday.
You go here. Here you go there. On 3, ready, break. Uncle Larry is in. Says at least the weather will be warmer on Saturday. The other Dave is here. He says, who knows what a mesh concept play is? Better learn it before Saturday. I just hope that the Zebras aren't throwing flags for phantom offensive pass interference with mesh routes. Just a hope. If I'm a betting man, we'll be up at Ameristar Council Bluffs Casino on Friday. Roadshow Friday, 4 to 6. Come on, see us. And across the river. Rule of the Day is asking, is there a 7:45 a.m. Saturday show? The show has been flexed, Rule of the Day. When we have road games later on in the day, the pregame, the weekend edition, will start at noon. So it's noon to 2 Central Time, not 7:45. We could do 2 shows for you, pre-game, but we'll stick to noon. Noon to 2 is the Saturday edition, the weekend edition.
That'll be you. I'll be doing my best to check in from L.A. Internet connection. Hoping.
Could be Elijah in a earbud phone situation, checking in.
I'm not sure Justice knows this, but Justice will be in on Saturday.
Yeah, noon to 2. He ain't leaving Friday.
Let's not forget Mark Kranak.
Kranak will be with us. That'll be good. Tuck is here. Asked the question, how much different will this team look on Saturday? I think there'll be a little juice. I think they'll be probably happy to be away from home and kind of band together a little bit and try and go get this 6th win. Grateful Red in from Colorado. Arlo is here. Uncle Jimmy checks in, says, let's go Dylan. Anonymous is making a statement. Our ascension to mediocrity is sure taking a hell of a lot longer than gravitating towards mediocrity ever did. Thank you for the Steve Peterson quote. Terry is in. He says, to all the Slim Shadys, please stand up. Cliff in Florida checks in. Good to have Cliff in. Game Dog always checks in. USC always has been a far different team in the Coliseum than when playing on the road. And it's been that way for decades. Dion's here as well. Yeah, SC's pretty good at home.
Do we have some breaking news in here before we get out the first segment? Dawson Merritt has tweeted a popcorn emoji. What does it mean? I don't know, but there's been a lot of smoke out there about Dawson Merritt this week. Now he's tweeting the popcorn. Ready for a show, maybe.
Well played. Mr. Jeff Snitley is in, part of the Boulder Peace Treaty. Mike Babcock is next. He has a glow-in-the-dark yellow hat on. Check it out in the Stream Hail Varsity YouTube next.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you. It's Hail Varsity Wednesday edition. Just a legit conversation. I want to get Mike Babcock's thought from Hail Varsity Hurrdat Sports, and can log on hurrdatsports.com, get Babber's column. Also on Twitter, thoughts on Nebraska USC at MD Babs on Twitter. Mike, is snoring my fault? I've been getting lambasted. It's like it's a zero blitz. No one picks up the blitzer. The ball flutters out of my hand. Whenever I make eye contact with my lovely wife between radio shows, she is, I'll just quote her. You may not wake up the next day if you keep snoring and keeping me up. What can I do about the snoring thing, man? Mike's like, let's talk football. Let's talk about this offense.
Bring in a new snoring coordinator.
Okay.
And change some things.
Come get the game plan.
The move out option is there, and I've offered it to her, but she didn't think that was funny. What's the hat you're wearing? Is this Golden State, baby?
That's a Golden State Warriors, of course.
Yeah, I like it. Does that thing come with batteries?
Good start.
It's good.
I did too.
No, it's good. Mike Babcock's with us. So Babbers, it's eerily similar to that West Virginia yellow.
Yeah, it's a little bit too yellow, probably even for the Golden State Warriors, but I like it. So.
No, I think it's good. I'm interested though with Saturday. What do you think Saturday? What's possible for this Nebraska offense, and what kind of showing can they present on the road?
Well, I look at it as, they had Indiana, and then you came back and played really well against Ohio State. So you had UCLA, and then you come back and play really well against USC. I don't know what kind of effect Holgorsen is going to have on the offense. Again, in such a short period of time, how can you you're not making significant changes,
right?
Obviously. And it's a learning process for him as well as it is for the players. And so I think that's a difficult thing. I think part of it is probably out of, I don't know if I should say this, but partly out of concern about whether Dylan Raiola might consider the transfer portal. Sure. If you don't make some changes in this offense. And this is a significant change at an unusual time. 3/4 of the way into the schedule, you're making that change. So I don't know how the players will adjust to that. On the other side of the ball, you got USC. There's a lot of pressure on Lincoln Riley, obviously, because nobody expected USC to be 4-5 at this point. He's changing quarterbacks, so he's got somebody new in there in charge of his offense. It's going to be a little bit difficult, both sides of the ball defensively, to say what the other team is going to do. As you mentioned earlier, if Haarberg is the starter, it's a different kind of an offense that you got to deal with than if Dillon is. And I agree with you. I don't know that we're going to find out tomorrow whether Dillon is going to play or not, but I would guess that he's going to go. Mm-hmm. And you want to leave that open-ended so that it, as you said, so that USC has to be concerned about, well, is it going to be this offense or is it going to be this offense with this quarterback? I think that's what you want to do. You don't want to just go say, no, Dillon can't play on Saturday, so we're not going to take him, or that Haarberg's going to be the guy that's going to start. You don't say that. You want them to prepare for both, or have to be concerned about both.
Mike, we've spent so much time this week talking about Dana Holgorsen and the quarterback situation at Nebraska. It kind of flies under the radar just a little bit. What's going on with USC and their quarterback situation? Miller Moss to the bench. They bring in the backup. And on one hand, you look at a Lincoln Riley offense. He's changed quarterbacks before. You especially think back to that Spencer Rattler, Caleb Williams year where it worked out really, really well for the Sooners. But you look at it, that's not an insignificant change to make a change at quarterback at this point in the season. Miller Moss is a guy that's been working with his wideouts dating back to the bowl game last year. They've been building a rapport there. Now you go to the guy off the bench that hasn't had that same opportunity, that hasn't had a chance this year to build confidence like Miller Moss. Only 8 passing attempts on the year so far, and now he steps in to play against Nebraska. Do you think we here in Nebraska are undervaluing just how significant it could be that USC has gone to the backup quarterback?
I think probably so, because of what you said, all the conversation about Holgorsen and being the new offensive coordinator and calling the plays. That's been the focus. The news conference on Monday, that was the focus. Didn't really say a whole lot about USC. And then the first time this season, we didn't have availability on Tuesday, which is very unusual. That was a big change, I think. Says a lot about what the concern is and what the plan was moving forward. So we had Monday, and then we're going to have tomorrow with Rule. So much has been made of Holgorsen that there hasn't been a lot of talk about USC. And USC is changing quarterbacks, and that's so. I guess I don't know. Did he do a lot of stuff at UNLV? You go back and study film at UNLV. What's the defensive preparation there? You've got to prepare for someone who hasn't been putting a lot on film or video to this point. You got to prepare for that. I think that's important. It's significant.
Well, the thing that's most significant is Nebraska's adjustment to a mobile quarterback. Mahavia is a talent that Georgia wanted, a talent that played ball at UNLV, and USC is able to run the football. They're back, really talented. Already at over 800 yards rushing the ball. And then you have some zone read or just that second option at quarterback on top of the receiving threats that SC has. Their offense has averaged 30. Now you sprinkle in the mobility factor. It's not fun if you're a defensive lineman. Got to stay in your lanes, keep contained, all that good stuff. But also be able to bring pressure or get pressure with 4, and that's been a want, but not a consistency for Nebraska. So who knows if this thing turns into good old-fashioned shootout. And now Nebraska needs to be able to participate in that, but the turnovers has been what's killed USC. When they've lost all these one-score ball games, we're talking Minnesota, we're talking Maryland, it is a lot of it, those points off turnovers, right? So that was Lincoln Riley's prerogative to make a change at quarterback, but I think it, quite frankly, is a bit idiotic. You're telling the kid to throw it 45 times, 2-3 interceptions is no fun, but he's kept you in or given you leads. So I think if I'm Miller Moss, clearly he's going to the portal, I feel scapegoated here. I mean, I wasn't playing great ball, but I wasn't the reason you're losing the football games.
Well, yeah, and then this far into the season, here comes the change, because you're putting 4 and 5 on the shoulder of the quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's there's more accountability to be had than that, but that's the way it's being presented, or that's the assumption that you make when you look at the decision to change quarterbacks for Nebraska. And, you know, mentioned the running game there. I wish Nebraska would be able to establish some kind of consistent running game, however you want to do things. So, you know, can they do that? I don't know. Are they inclined to do that? I don't know.
Well, you've got a better chance to establish it and go to it with Dana Holgerson's history, in my humble opinion, compared to what you had with offensive coordinator Satterfield, because it was really hit or miss, and his own admission of needing to be able to commit to it more on his own. I mean, I remember that presser 3 weeks ago now. So that's one thing that I'm looking forward to on Saturday, the in-game play call, the feel, and what kind of rhythm can you get the offense in for more than 1 or 2 drives.
Yeah, well, and that's an adjustment for the Huskers, right?
Mm-hmm.
For the offensive line and everybody. You got to be able to make that adjustment to pick up the pace if that's what you want to do, or if that's what Holgerson is going to implement to try to make the offense more successful. But it requires that the players are able to do that. You know, that they can pick that up in 2 weeks' time.
It's Mike Babcock with us here, Hail Varsity Radio, talking Nebraska, USC, what we're expecting this weekend. And Mike, on a slightly different note, USC's wearing 1972 throwback uniforms on Saturday. Do you have memories of that 72 USC team? They went undefeated, really kicked the crap out of just about everyone they played that year en route to a national championship. Any memories of that team?
Not really. I mean, it all kind of runs together when you get to be as old as I am.
Fair enough. They had a young Lynn Swan.
Experienced, not old.
Yeah. No, that they've had USC. It's still hard to process for me that Nebraska's playing USC in a conference game. That to me, that I just don't. That doesn't make any sense to me. And the same way with last week against UCLA. That's a conference game. Are you kidding me?
That's what it is, man.
But no, I don't really have any specific memories of that team. And Nebraska's not wearing 72 uniforms, is it?
It'd be kind of cool if they were. I'd take it. Babbers, yeah. We'll holler at you a little bit later on. Always love to talk some football with you. Thanks for joining us today, man.
I'd take 72 play rather than the uniform.
Okay. Yes, that's absolutely it. The 72 Huskers show up and
keep on hoping.
yeah, that's about right. Babbers, thank you much, bud.
Thanks, guys.
There he is, Mike Babcock with us here from Hail Varsity, Hurrdat Sports, and if you want to take a gander at that yellow Warriors hat he was rocking, Hail Varsity YouTube. Can always watch the show that way. Like and subscribe, or just check out the posted episode. Spotify, iTunes, Google Play as well for the podcast. Old Juan Camacho calling his shot, saying Dawson Merritt is in. We'll talk about some of these recruiting targets coming up next.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you. Big thanks to Mike Babcock from Hail Varsity, Hurrdat Sports. Open phone still 548-91240. Want to jump in? 800-825-5865. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Justice Rhodey. Get to more of your comments in the stream. Redwine65 says, SC fan said Riley leaves the run faster than sat. We shall see. But as much as we talk about the unknown for SC's defense against Holgorsen and Nebraska, there is some familiarity, right? I mean, Lincoln Riley knows Dana. Dana knows Lincoln. They come from the same coaching tree. There's absolutely a preference on what they want to do versus what they can do. We'll check in with Evan Bland here in about 15 minutes as well. So let's talk Dawson Merritt on Twitter, the Bama commit that's been projected by Wiltfong and company to be flipping to Nebraska. Nebraska's still in it for Cortez Mills. He's an Oklahoma commit, while the AD and president of Oklahoma has come out to say Venables is our guy next season. The fan base less than thrilled in year one in the SEC of Oklahoma football. Chase Lofton, of course, still with Florida State. And then you have Aiden Mantui, the Cal commit, the safety that Nebraska really likes. The Moby Dick here is of course, Michael Terry III. Still Nebraska or Texas. Talking with Tim Verghese on Monday. There's still no flag planted right now for Michael Terry III, but you do get a bump, at least from some of these offensive kids, Elijah and Justice, with the fact that Dana's now running the shop, and that's a good thing. There is proof, there's excitement, there's the reality that football can be fun on offense with Dylan and company moving forward, with Dana in the headset, presumably beyond the Iowa game. And listen, if Dana is going to be a long-term thing before another knock at his door happens for a head job or a coordinator gig in the NFL, he is going to have to, and he will, show progress and some high-flying, high-scoring offenses. That's a key. With all that being said, you have the here and now, and that here and now can sell hope, can sell vision, and can maybe get some more dudes into the locker room for Nebraska.
Mm-hmm. One thing I'd like to note with a couple of these recruitments. First off, let's start with Dawson Merritt, reading the tea leaves. Whenever one national recruiting quote-unquote insider comes out and changes a crystal ball or prediction or whatever it may be, that makes you go, okay, that's interesting. Wonder what they're hearing. Whenever you have a string of guys all the same week making the same projection, you're wondering, okay, where's this information coming from? Because they're all likely getting it from the same person or the same group of people. And whenever it's all consistent like that, it makes you think, is Alabama talking? Or is Dawson Merritt, is his camp going out there and letting people know, hey, there's a big thing coming down soon, be ready for it? I don't know. I'm not willing to call that one done. You feel good about that one, just based on how things have looked this week.
Nebraska's
right?
Still in the race for it. And honestly, you have vicinity, which is good. It's closer for Dawson to go to Lincoln than Tuscaloosa. It's going to come down to a bag of money.
Oh, yeah.
And Alabama, second to none. They spend to win legally and at some points in their career illegally. Nebraska is competitive. But what you can't, and I sent you this yesterday, Coach Prime, for as much hell as he's caught, kind of has it figured out. Now, what you don't want is to be inconsistent in the portal. The old Mel Tucker example, 11-2, 5-7. You can't yo-yo. That being said, Deion's not wrong. Go get and go take from the high schools, but get guys that can come in and help you, like the Carter Nelsons. You got to use them. That's important too. You got to use them when you get them. But okay, E-Beef says Clausburn is the one that is leaking it. We will have a full Clausburn forecast on Friday. But listen, I think the reality is you just need to sell some proof and some hope, and you have a little bit more hope with, all right, a different direction offensively, because, brother, this is hard to watch if you're a Nebraska fan. And if I'm a recruit and I got other dudes on my phone line or on my Snapchat, I'm sorry. The Nebraska may feel great. I may love the coach. I may really like the quarterback, but until Monday, my faith was fleeting for this offense.
Well, and that's really true. But in the recruiting, you got to read the tea leaves. And that's why I'm talking about the tea leaves here with Dawson Merritt. Like when all the recruiting insiders are getting the same information at once, you're wondering, okay, what in the know person is talking? It makes you feel like they can't all be wrong, right? To flip it around to another guy, Michael Terry. What was the story on him back in June and July? He would have liked to get his recruitment done and wrapped up before the football season started. That didn't happen. There was enough interest in Nebraska. Now you ask yourself, based on how the season has gone, from an outsider's perspective, you look at it and you go, man, why would you be looking at Nebraska considering what Texas is doing this year and the great quarterback that they have waiting in the wings in Arch Manning that could be your guy moving forward? Well, what is keeping Nebraska in this race? Why hasn't he made his decision yet?
There's 7 Michael Terry III's already done at Texas.
Well, it just makes you think, simply put, Nebraska is still in the running in that recruitment. Sure. I still think Texas is probably in the driver's seat, but if Nebraska didn't stand a chance, if there wasn't a legitimate interest, he would have made his declaration by now because he was a guy that wanted to wrap it up early. I mean, we were talking about him the same way we were talking about David Sanders Jr. in the summertime, where it's like, man, Nebraska's got to really pick up some ground here in the next couple of weeks because this isn't a recruitment that's going into the season. Now we're into early November and Michael Terry still hasn't made his decision. You have to ask yourself why in recruiting whenever you read the tea leaves. Why is all the information coming out about Dawson Merritt? Why has Michael Terry not made a decision? Not saying both those guys are coming. I'm just saying, being the listener at home, ask yourself why.
Nebraska's competitive financially. They like the vision, and the connection has been felt in a good way with this coaching staff and the work they've put in. There's no earthly reason for a team at 5-4 to be in this running, other than the work, the connection, the relationship building, and the recruits believe that there are better days ahead. And
there it is.
And the hope, and there's proof to that. All right, here's the vision for the offense. Let me hit reset real quick. Dana will have vision for the offense. Dana had 3 guys a year ago played in the NFL, all starting in Week 12 at quarterback. Get some Sunday guys, more Sunday guys in the locker room. Trips out to USC the middle of November are supposed to be more than nostalgia and helmet games. They're supposed to have rankings next to your name. They're supposed to have playoff implications. They're supposed to have Big Ten Conference title game implications. They're supposed to be about playoff positioning. They're supposed to be about, all right, if you can't get into the playoff, what New Year's Day consolation can you settle for? And that's not reality right now. It's not reality for either football program. That's befuddling, especially if you're USC and you dropped $90 million on this whiz kid. Nebraska trying to get it fixed and figured out. They're working their you-know-what off on the trail. Well, wind down. Hour 1, Hail Varsity continues. Subscribe, Hail Varsity YouTube channel.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back into it, Wednesday edition, Hail Varsity. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Justice Rhodey. Reminder to get buckled up. And driving is a full-time job. Phones, food, friends, well, they all need your attention when you're not driving. Stop the distractions. Just drive a message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. How did bowling go last night?
Not bad.
Problems in the red zone?
We did not win. I did not have my best night.
But you gave it your all.
It was a 1-score loss. That's what we'll say. And if we're going to compare this to football,
this week.
If we're going to compare it to football, it was a 1-score loss. You can't be mad about the fight back after game 1, but you put yourself in an early hole, and it was just a little too late with the comeback attempt. But overall, it was a solid night. Solid night.
Do you when it's Elijah up there and he's motoring towards the line, and you need not even a strike, but it's a tough pin placement situation.
Yep.
Do you thrive under pressure, or does this thing gutter?
Depends how many beers I've consumed.
Depends on how
in the
many
evening.
pitchers Elijah's hammered.
Yeah, that is a big factor. I can't say...
Usually it's supposed to take the edge off.
I know. I can't say I am consistently good in those moments. It depends on how the night's going, though. And that's both on a consumption, how the previous games have gone.
Is it frowned upon to granny bowl?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We got a couple grannies in the league, and they bowl like normal people. So
what I mean by granny, it's like you're shooting.
Oh, I'm well aware of the style.
The old Rick Barry free throws.
But if the legitimate grannies in the bowling league can bowl normal, and you can't,
I'm just talking about making sure you knock pins down in that pressure moment.
Oh, you might as well put bumpers up, Schmitty. What are we doing here?
While we're putting bumpers up, can we do the night bowling or the
glow ball?
The glow ball.
Get
bowling.
the disco ball and
something like that.
Do you like the hurts my game though?
Play White Rabbit on repeat 37 times and have your friend give you a brownie.
We did have some wild songs playing on the radio at the bowling alley last night. Gangsta's Paradise by Coolio starts playing, and I'm getting into it, and then I realize it's not Coolio, it's Weird Al.
Do you feel better about yourself when you go gangsta instead of gangsters?
How is the song spelled, Schmitty?
It's an A, isn't it?
Yeah, it's Gangstas. Anyway, it wasn't Gangsta's Paradise. It was the Weird Al version, and that completely soured my mood immediately.
I got drugged to that movie in the theater.
The new one?
No, whatever the movie, the soundtrack.
Oh, that actually has this actual legitimate Gangsta's Paradise song?
Yeah. What was it called? I don't know.
Yeah.
It was Michelle Pfeiffer going to an inner city school, and
yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah. She didn't get laughed or thrown out of the classroom.
I was gonna say I did hear surprisingly good things about the new Weird Al movie. You heard about that? It's the biopic about Weird Al, but it's completely played up and fake. It's like
Weird Al prints $1 million a year, dude. I mean, he just does his thing, and away we go. Can't hate on him.
I mean, it's to his credit.
Thank you, Moonbot, for the win. Dangerous Minds. Yeah. In the theater. Love it. But was severely disappointed.
Anyway, credit to Weird Al. There's not many people that 20 years later still have their music playing in a bowling alley, but Weird Al is one of them. So good for him.
Shrek 2, Schmitty, is what E-Beef says. I need to see Shrek 1 and 2.
What?
Never seen Shrek.
What are we doing?
Again, Carson got to watch American Pie and Ted as a child.
Shrek isn't even a kid's movie. It's for actual people. It's so good.
Hour 2 on the way. Evan Bland.
The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Back with you, Tower 2. It's Hail Varsity. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Justice Rhodey, Jeremiah Sirles coming up here in about 25 minutes. We welcome in Evan Bland with the Omaha World Herald at Evan Bland, OWH. Evan, how's the Wednesday going, man? Thanks for the time.
Yeah, you got it, guys. It's a little rainier here than it's going to be in L.A. in a few days, but hanging in.
I know. Evan's got the shades and the shorts all packed up, and we'll hit recruiting. We'll get you your thoughts on Dana. But Elijah's asking me if he should rent a minivan while out in L.A.
Could be convenient.
What says Evan Bland about L.A. rentals?
For a minivan? Well, so I've never been to Los Angeles. This will be my first time. Been to California a number of times, but all the pros out there say it's not about the mileage. It's about the time of day. So if you're driving that thing in rush hour, you might as well just put it in park and get some good tunes going. But, other than that, if you want to drive around and check out the beach and some of the touristy sites, this is not your typical Midwest Big Ten college town, so you can probably have a little fun with that.
Well, see, I got to go see all the Big Ten landmarks while I'm out there. You know, Randy's Donuts, all the places that you really think of when you think of the Big Ten. So, I mean, I could Uber around to these places, but Uber prices are crazy nowadays, especially out there. I'm thinking I could save money in the long run by getting myself the rental car, even the rental minivan.
Noted Big Ten staple, Roscoe's Chicken and Waffles.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. How am I going to make it to Roscoe's?
And pulling up in a minivan is not sore thumb or anything.
I think it lowers the risk level, you know?
Yeah, you're driving down Rodeo Drive in your minivan or whatever. Assumptions will probably be made, but that's okay.
Look, a van full of Nebraskans. If you're going to go minivan, get the Dodge Caravan and get the Woody panels.
From like 1992.
Go ask for the throwback. If USC's going vintage, you need to as well.
I mean, you could just go the full-on, Hollywood throwback. You could do the station wagon from Vacation and just, pile into that thing and do the slow-motion run up to the Coliseum. Why not?
Yeah, he did. Now wait till you drive it. I love it.
It's definitely not as sexy as going with, the convertible, but I'm thinking about my wallet here, you know?
Just go all out. You got the stash. And
the stash in a minivan is a dangerous combo.
That's a bad thing. Evan, let's talk about good combos, and that is the Nebraska offense and Dana Holgorsen. Do you believe it's going to be a good combo for the Final Three? And as we talk part of this Final Three SC on Saturday.
I mean, I think I don't know that it can be all that worse than what we've seen in terms of production and predictability and all that. But at the same time, typically when you see a move like this, I want to look at precedent and look at other situations and, hey, how did it work out? And there really isn't one for this situation where you have a guy who wasn't part of the program in any capacity 2 weeks ago is now your offensive coordinator and calling plays. And so I think there are elements of what Dana Holgorsen can bring that could be helpful. I think if Nebraska played with a little bit more pace, that's a possibility. I thought Matt Rule kind of broke it down to its simplest terms on Monday, saying, hey, we needed a fresh set of eyes to come in and say, who are our guys that can make plays? What are the plays that we can run the best? And then let's have those guys run those plays. So, I hear that and I think, well, maybe they're going to limit the amount of personnel that they get in there. I think that was an observation we've had for a lot of the season has been it just didn't ever feel like there were enough touches to go around, and maybe that's because Nebraska put too much emphasis on trying to spread those touches instead of finding a workhorse or somebody in particular who they could trust in certain situations. So, I mean, that's kind of my hunch is maybe you'll see things pared down a little bit in terms of personnel, in terms of the type of plays that are called, maybe the game plan, just in terms of what they feel like can work against USC's defense will be a little different. And then, what does the flow look like when you get into the second half of the game and your script is gone? What's the tendencies? Nebraska going to take some deeper shots down the field? Are they going to pound the run? And then, of course, by the way, there's the unknown variable of who the quarterback's going to be, whether that's Dylan Raiola or if they're going to turn to Heinrich Haarberg. And you talk about guys with different skill sets. I mean, those are two very different game plans depending on who you have. So hopefully maybe there'll be some clarity on that from Matt Rule when he talks Thursday. But a whole bunch of unknowns in this particular game. But I think certainly there are elements that you can point to and say, yeah, these things could help Nebraska in the short term.
Evan, do you have concerns about Dana, his air raid history, looking at Nebraska running the football this year and just saying, you know what, we can just toss that half of the playbook out? Do you have concerns about that, or do you think Dana doesn't necessarily follow the mold of some other guys in that Hal Mummy, Mike Leach tree that, I shouldn't say don't run the ball, but definitely don't emphasize it?
You look at some of his offenses at different stops, West Virginia and Houston, and he's had a few where they've been strong run teams. And I think you talk to people that have covered his teams and been around him. I mean, one of the better compliments that he's gotten, I think, pretty consistently has been he is able to tailor the offense to the personnel that he has. Now, there's the question of how well does he know Nebraska's personnel, having, again, been around it for just a couple of weeks. But I think, somebody that accomplished, if he's been pouring over tape and film from this season, you can look at different areas that maybe Nebraska has strengths in. So if they feel like running the ball in certain formations is the way to go, I think you'll see them do that. If they feel like, they have playmakers at receiver, especially, big-bodied guys who can go up and make a play 10 or 15 yards down the field. I think they do that. I think if you look at a guy like Thomas Fidone and say, hey, what's the best way to use this guy, I think Holgorsen maybe will have some ideas for that. So I think that's kind of the short term. The long-term discussion to me is extremely interesting when you talk about, Matt Rule has come out and said he would like Holgorsen to be on staff as the OC next season. Obviously, a lot has to play out and what ambitions Holgorsen has and what other opportunities are out there and so on. But that, to me, is extremely fascinating where, Matt Rule's offenses have tended to be ball control, protect the defense. You always hear the term body blows and pound the ball sort of attacks, and that's not been generally what Holgorsen has done. He's been, as we've said, more of an air raid, kind of open it up, aggressive style of play caller, and that's what Matt Rule wanted in the short term. But what does that look like in the long term? And then how do you blend that attack of that style to win in the Big Ten when it is windy and it is cold and the defenses that you're facing don't give up busts or big plays the way that they do in the Big 12 or some other places. So that to me in the long term is the most interesting part, because you wouldn't think on its face that those two styles would be compatible. But maybe there's a middle ground there. Maybe there's a vision that they'll work through once the season's over.
Evan Bland with us here, Hail Varsity Radio. Evan with the World Herald. Omaha.com to read him, and at Evan Bland, OWH, to follow on Twitter. What do you believe? What's your gut tell you about Nebraska's quarterback situation? And comment, if you can, on Maeva, what SC's running with at quarterback.
Yeah, whatever you projected for this game last month, throw it out the window, right? In terms of USC making a move away from Miller Moss, who was, I think, still the number 2 passer in the Big Ten at this point. And he's had his moments where he's thrown some picks, but he hasn't been that bad. And you bring in Maeva, who was a, highly sought after quarterback out of the portal, lost the battle with Moss in fall camp, but is the more mobile of the two. So we'll see, what different kind of element he brings to this situation. Nebraska, as we mentioned, do you go with Raiola? That'd be my hunch at this point when you talk about coming out of a bye week and having that extended time to heal and to get ready to roll. I know Nebraska's been preparing Harburg as well in that situation, so maybe we'll find some clarity. But, to me, it's talk about two teams right now that are feeling urgency to win in November. USC is going to have to win 2 of its last 3 to go to a bowl. Nebraska needs 1. They're underdogs this weekend. Both teams are making pretty notable moves, pretty bold, bold options that they're going under to try to shake things up and to generate points and excitement and momentum into December when you're going to need all that you can get in the portal and everything else. So I think it's one of the more unpredictable November games involving Nebraska I can think of in recent memory, just because there are so many unknowns on both sides of the ball. The Holgorsen factor, going out to the West Coast, both teams coming off of a bye, so you haven't seen either of them play in a couple weeks. It's just a very interesting game, and it feels like a game where maybe it comes down to something other than what we're talking about, whether that's a strong defensive performance somewhere, maybe somebody makes a play on special teams or whatever it is. There's so much unknown on those offenses that you have to, I think, rely on those other parts of the team that have been a little more consistent, and maybe one of those areas will win you a game on Saturday.
Evan, do you have reason to believe this defense will have the ability to bounce back? You look at the last 3 weeks, I've brought up this stat plenty, opposing quarterbacks having great success against that Nebraska defense. USC is not a team that's afraid to air it out. Do you think that's a matchup issue for Nebraska's defense, or do you have reason to believe that they can have an improved performance on Saturday?
We've seen their best and their worst this year, and it's been a pretty wide range. I think, to me, Nebraska's defense is at its best when when it's defending runs right up the middle, when you have Ty Robinson and Nash Huntmaker being able to swallow up ball carriers. And I think that's what we saw against Ohio State. And in that game, the Buckeyes thought they could do it, and they really couldn't all that well. Indiana was kind of the opposite, where they're hitting the sidelines and back shoulder fades and bouncing runs outside and all the rest. And so I don't know that USC is a great matchup for the Black Shirts in that sense. You look at Woody Marks and what he's been able to do. He's been one of the best rushers in the Big Ten, and he functions as a receiver too. So he's getting balls to the edge and making plays in space. And I think their receiver group is kind of an interesting one. It's a little bit of a smaller group, but they're fast. A lot of 10, 15-yard gains, but not a lot of 70, 50, 60, 70-yard touchdowns, that kind of thing. So to me, it's a game where if you're Nebraska, you're going to have to make plays in space. I think you look at what USC's done in terms of protecting the quarterback. I don't know that you can count on a ton of quarterback pressure. I think it's going to come down to playing good coverage, tackling in space, swarming to the ball. And typically, I think when Nebraska's had its good games on that side of the ball, you can tell early on, that guys you're getting a lot of hats to the ball and that sort of thing. So I think you find out pretty quickly in that first quarter. And if you can force a couple, punts or turnovers right away, I mean, who knows? The natives out there could be clamoring for Miller Moss to come back, and you could have a lot of doubt on that Trojan sideline. So I think, the defense has that capability, but I do think especially that first and second quarter is going to be really important for them to set the tone.
Evan Bland with us. Evan, I want to talk recruiting here in Nebraska in hot pursuit. Cortez Mills, Chase Lofton, Michael Terry III, but some tea leaves to read on Dawson Merritt, the Bama commit from Kansas City. What's your feel here, just overall, with Nebraska's chase here for some pretty high-profile guys in this 2025 class?
Yeah, I mean, the Merritt wind shift is especially interesting, given his commitment to Alabama. It sounds like he'll be a visitor maybe for the Wisconsin game in a week. I think all of those names that you mentioned, like it further underscores the importance of these last three games for Nebraska. Like the range of outcomes includes winning all three and being 8-4 and being in the conversation for a New Year's Bowl and a ton of momentum, or you lose out, you miss a bowl game, and it becomes a hard sell with a lot of these guys. And so I think that's kind of where we are in college football right now, is in terms of resources and things that players get off the field. Like a lot of that's evening out in the NIL era. It's going to even out even more in the revenue sharing era. But the thing that's going to make the difference is where can you go and win games and have fun and be playing meaningful football into November and beyond. And I think there are a lot of players like the ones that you mentioned that can look at Nebraska and they're interested and they see a lot of good things there. But do you see the stuff on the field that would, put you kind of over the edge, put you all in to join that program and to move it forward? So I think that's really the best thing they can do. It's not about recruiting pitches and facility tours. It's about, hey, can you show that you can go to USC and win? Can you end a long drought against Wisconsin or beat Iowa on Black Friday? I think if they do those things, their chances with these guys increases, considerably. On-field performance is always kind of the end of the sentence, isn't it? I mean, all right. These things are great, but are you winning on Saturdays, and are you in position to win? Evan, enjoy L.A., and keep an eye out on Elijah, all right? Both of you come back safe and sound, all right? You got it. We'll watch out for those minivans on the highway.
It's a dude in a stash with some aviators driving a minivan, waving this big red flag. Evan, take care, bud. Appreciate you.
Thanks, guys. See ya.
There he is. Good to hear from Evan Bland, and can check him out on the podcast, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. Is where you can find Hail Varsity Radio. Like, subscribe, search, and give us a rating. Good, bad, or ugly. We'll take it. Hail Varsity YouTube. Papa Sirles is next. What's he think of Saturday? And Nebraska's new situation on offense. Jeremiah Sirles on the way.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back into it. It's Hail Varsity. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. It is Papa Sirles time. Jeremiah Sirles with us. Husker standout, agent extraordinaire. Find him on Twitter at JSirles71. It's Trojan Week, Sirles. How we doing?
I'm fantastic, man. How about you guys?
We're good. Thanks for squeezing us in. And, oh, yeah, by the way, let's do the air quote from analyst to, as you tweeted out, offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
It's the Dana show, baby.
There was no, you could put lipstick all over this pig. It was going to be offensive coordinator at one point in time. Did I anticipate it was going to be in 8 days? No. But I also love that Dana came in there with a scythe and was like, what do you do here? Oh, too bad. Right, and just started lopping heads off as he went up and down the hallway there, because that's what needed to happen. That is exactly what needed to happen. This offense was stagnant. There was communication issues. It was just a disaster. And for him to come in there and for Rule to have the balls to come out and say this is what needs to be done and to do it, I think it was a great move. I think it sends a great message to your team. It sends a great message to Husker Nation. I was ecstatic when I heard the news that he was going to be calling plays this week.
Well, what do you think the task is for Dana over these final 3 weeks of the season? Is he coming in and remodeling the house, if you will, or is he coming in and, sweeping up the floors, maybe a fresh coat of paint here and there, a new microwave? What's the task this week for Dana Holgorsen?
You can't paint the house if the foundation's crumbling, right? And so I think Dana Holgorsen's job is to get the foundation put back together, right? Get everything from the ground up put back together. Don't try and color up things. Don't try and make things look pretty. Just start from the floor, base fundamentals. This is what I want. This is my expectation of you. This is what I want to see from you. Start there and work our way up. That is what is going to be. It's not realistic to think that in 8 days that the baby went out with the bathwater and we started a whole new offense and new schemes and new everything. Like, there's going to be wrinkles, but it's still going to be the Marcus Satterfield offensive playbook. There's just going to be some new wrinkles put in there because it's just not realistic to put in a brand new offense in week 9.
Jeremiah Sirles with us. Sirles, how broken is the offense? What's salvageable?
I think that we still have some playmakers on the edge. We still have some really talented running backs. And if Dylan Raiola plays, we still have a great quarterback, right? So there's still a lot of pieces that are there, but the dysfunction of this offense is not salvageable. The communication errors, the delay of games, the lining up in the wrong spots, the bubble screens, like all that stuff has just been maddening to watch. And anyone that's worth their salt in football is going to walk in and do a self-scout of this offense and go, trash, throw that out. There's some pieces there. But, hey, here's what I want to see, right? Here's what we're going to do, and here's what I know has worked for me in the past. What's the harm in trying it, right? What's the harm in trying something new here, right? We can sit here and bang our heads against the wall as long as we want. If it's not working, then we're all idiots, right? Let's try something new.
And for those listening on maybe their radio or podcast form that cannot watch, that sound you heard there was Sirles banging his microphone into his forehead. It was a great visual image.
and that is an insured microphone. Sirles is also podcast man. But the offense has done what well? Let's start there. What, from your football life and eyes, all right, what can you travel to L.A.? What can you bring back against Wisconsin? What can you do in Iowa City here? What
isn't getting thrown out at this point?
Yeah, what's the leftovers?
Thomas Fidone is a guy that I always seem to come back to, right? A guy that, talking to some NFL scouts, he's got some promise, right? He's got the big body, but he's been used incorrectly. And so if I'm Dana Holgorsen, I'm looking at Thomas Fidone and I'm looking at Isaiah Neyor, and I'm meeting them and I'm going, ooh, you're shiny and fun. What can we do with you, right? How can I create plays designed for you where you're not the first, you're not the second option, or you're not the outlet, right? But this play design is made for eye candy everywhere and then pop you out and have you be wide open, because that's what's been missing from this offense, is scheming guys open, right? I watch offenses all day long. I watch tape all day long. It's my job. It's what I do. I scout players. And I'm watching other offenses like, man, schematically, this is fun to watch because they're teeing things up through a couple plays, and then they're coming with the haymaker over here because they've worked it through. And I just haven't seen that from this offense. And so I'm looking at guys like Isaiah Nair, who's a mismatch with his body type, and Thomas Fedoni, who's a mismatch with his body type, and Jamal Banks, who sometimes can be a mismatch where if you line him up in the slot and you get big personnel and he's lined up with a linebacker or a safety, and just looking to see how Dana Holgorsen wants to schematically scheme some of these guys open. So it's not just guys making contested catch after contested catch and Dylan having to fit it in super tight windows, but getting just some easy high percentage completion throws for this offensive skill group.
Sirles, on that same line, if we just zero in on the rushing attack, what does Nebraska do well from a rushing point of view? Because nothing. Okay.
I have looked at it 100 different ways. I have tried to figure out like what is our bread and butter, what is our thing we can rely on, and when we need to go to the well, we can say this is it, and we don't have one. I have not seen a play that I can just be like, oh yeah, the old run up the middle play, that one works. Like it doesn't. And so if I'm Dana Holgorsen, you have a blank canvas, right? The whole whiteboard is open. Go into the mad scientist lab, smoke a cigar, have a scotch, and then come back out and be like, this is what we're going to do. Because there's nothing that you need to salvage from this run game. There's no piece that you need to bring with you into the new era of what this offense is going to be. Start fresh there. Start fresh.
So with that in mind, what do you think Nebraska does from a running the ball point of view against USC? Like what can you actually get installed in, say, a week and a half of what Dana Holgorsen thinks this rushing attack can be? What do you call?
Depends who's playing quarterback.
Ooh.
Right? And that for me is the card that we hold against USC right now. Right? Is it Dylan? Is it Harburg? Is it a combination of the two? Right? Because there is no one right now who is more panicked than the quality control coaches of USC. Right? They're going, okay, we had all these tendencies. We knew what they were going to run. We know Dylan's this. And now they're going, okay, well, Sat's now the highest paid tight end coach in the country. Dana Holgorsen's taking over. Is it going to be a dinged up Dylan Raiola, or is it going to be a guy that we have to worry about his legs? Right? And so that's where I started the show with who's ready to watch this thing on Saturday, because there's no telling what's going to come out there in the run game. It could be a zone read scheme with Harburg. It could be a pin and pull scheme. It can be a bunch of different things. And I don't really know. I know West Virginia, he still relied pretty heavily on the run, even though I know it's in his DNA to want to throw the ball over the yard. But I really have zero expectation of what this run game is going to look like going into Saturday, because who knows? And it's so dependent on who's the trigger man at quarterback.
When it comes to morale and just playing offense, what does his resume and also his personality bring to guys who are in that huddle or getting signals in? What does that do here from a morale standpoint?
You know, from a morale standpoint, if I'm a player on this offense, I have more respect for Matt Rule changing things up than if he were to just stay loyal to Satterfield, right? Because if I'm a player and I'm going, man, week in and week out, this isn't working and we're not changing, and Matt Rule talks about always doing the right thing and what's best for the team and the best player is going to play. If he doesn't make this change, I am just sitting there going, okay, here we go again. But as a player, if I'm in that locker room and I see Coach Rule come out and say, this is our offensive coordinator, we're changing things, I'm going, all right, Coach, I'm with you. Mm-hmm. I'm picking up what you're putting down. Like I see the message you're sending across the entire organization, right? If you're not good enough, I'll find someone else who is, right? That's a statement to every single person that is involved in winning games on Saturday. No one is safe, because at the end of the day, he wears the hat that says HBC, head ball coach. It begins and ends with him. So what? If it's going down right now, might as well do it your way, right? Might as well figure it out, because it's your job to drag this thing back up to where it needs to be.
It's Jeremiah Sirles with us here, Hail Varsity Radio, talking Nebraska USC, as well as the Dana Holgorsen impact as he takes over Nebraska's offensive play calling duties. And Sirles, quickly here before we get you out, I do want to flip this around to the defensive side of the ball. Feels like at times that defense has been Jekyll and Hyde. As of late, it's been the secondary that's been picked on. It's been the pass rush that hasn't quite been able to get home against both Indiana and UCLA. What does this defense need to be moving forward over the final 3 games of the season to give Nebraska a chance at bowl eligibility?
Yeah, you know, it's weird to pick at the defense, because they're really the main reason we're winning the games we are, and we're staying in the games that we're staying in. But you're right. It's been the lack of the ability to get to the quarterback. And a lot of that is because this team is built on getting to the quarterback, right? The twists up front, the sending exotic pressures, the looks that try and confuse an offensive line in a protection scheme. And when you aren't getting to the quarterback, it kind of ruins your identity. And so I want to find ways for guys like Jamari Butler and guys like Williams to win their one-on-one matchups. I'm putting a lot on the guys up front, being Ty Robinson or Elijah Judy or Cam Leonard, whoever's in there, to shoulder the load of it can't be a scheme thing to get to the quarterback. At one point in time, you got to line up, look the guy across from you and go, I'm beating your ass and I'm getting to the quarterback, right? And that's the mentality that you have to have so that Tony White can feel comfortable to call some more coverages, right? Call some guys to help the guys in the back end that are struggling a little bit more instead of just hanging them out to dry and be like, we got to get to the quarterback, so I got to send 5 or I got to send 6. And that piece, and that just comes down to guys up front winning one-on-one matchups.
Jeremiah Sirles with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Papa Sirles joining us here, and find him on Twitter at JSirles71. Last thought, is it a real thing in the locker room where the defense has done the heavy lifting for almost 2 years, and it's been a sputtering offense? Can that wear on fellas in the locker room?
Absolutely. I just did my other podcast, the O-Line Committee. We talked about how the Chicago Bears defense is going to eventually skull drag everyone on that offense because they're inept, right? I don't think we're at that point of with the Husker program, but it does wear on you, right? It does wear on you when you look at the stats and you go, golly, boys, if we don't hold a team under 14 points, we lose. Like, that's not a realistic expectation to ask anyone in college football era to do. Right? You kind of say, hey, 20, 21, 24, like we should be able to score more points than that. If we can hold an offense in college football under 20 points, we should win a football game. But 14 is just an unrealistic number. And if you look at what happened last year against Nebraska, they kind of just ran out of gas, right? When you look at the time of possession and the snap count differential between those, it's hard to ask guys to continue to go out there play after play. And even against UCLA, right? They drive down, you bow up at the end, hold them to a field goal. And you're like, all right, here we go. And the offense goes 3 and out. It's just kind of a kick in the balls over and over again. So it's not going to be the point, whose fault is it, but it does just wear on you mentally and physically as the season progresses.
Sirles will holler again. Appreciate the time, man.
Absolutely, guys. Enjoy the California, Elijah. Go Big Red.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back into it at Hail Varsity. Time for a Jock Doc Wednesday. Nebraska Orthopedic Center. Dr. Brandon Seifert with us. Dr. Brandon, how's the week? Thanks for the time.
You bet, Chris. Week is good, buddy. How are you guys doing?
We are doing a lot better than Dak Prescott. Well, maybe Dak's doing okay too. He's not in Big D. Took a little breather to New York to investigate this surgery. How wild is it to have surgery on the hamstring? He has that partial avulsion of his hamstring, and it needs that type of treatment.
Yeah, Chris, it's pretty uncommon, especially in the sports world. We definitely see, for the number of hamstring injuries we see, very uncommon to have to do any type of surgery for those. It's the one thing, though, we always look for whenever we have hamstring injuries. So as we like to do here, kind of rewinding back to some anatomy. So hamstring, that's obviously that big muscle group that's behind your thigh. 4 major kind of muscles back there, tendons that come down and attach onto the knee. But the big part there is all those hamstring muscles form tendons at the top, and they basically attach up at the top, kind of basically where you're sitting down, kind of that bone you're sitting on. That's called your ischial tuberosity. That's basically where these tendons attach to, and that's the thing you always have to watch out for whenever we have a hamstring injury, is making sure that pain is not up in that region that's further up, which is where those tendons attach, because that basically changes the game, such as this scenario here. You go from one scenario where you stretch the muscle, or maybe stretch where the muscle and tendon come together, and that's a classic kind of hamstring sprain, rehab, ice, stretch, and you get back to playing with no surgery. Where you run into troubles is when that injury occurs, obviously up at the top, where those tendons attach onto the bone. You can actually pull part of that tendon off the bone, and that starts to move you into that consideration surgical category, depending on the severity of the tear. Is it full thickness and it goes all the way through, or is it more partial? you can maybe try some rehab and some other injections for it.
It's Dr. Brandon Seifert with us here at Jock Doc Wednesday. And Dr. Brandon, whenever you see that partial avulsion, I guess one of the discussion points that Dak Prescott and his team had was whether or not surgery was going to be necessary for this. Can you give me the pros and cons of each for going into this, getting it fixed with surgery or not? It sounds like either way, it was unlikely that we'd see him back in the field this season.
Yeah, absolutely. So, one, we'll start with a non-op or non-surgical treatment first. So, benefits non-surgical treatment is obviously not surgery, not having to do an incision, not having to move the soft tissues out of the way. Kind of cuts down on the chance for like a nerve injury to happen. There's a very large nerve that basically goes right through the zone called the sciatic nerve, and that basically goes right through the zone of where these hamstring tendons are. So you have to be really mindful and careful of that when you're doing surgery here. So by not doing surgery, obviously you avoid that chance of injury there. The big question always with any type of partial avulsion type injury is how much of that tendon can you get to heal back by not doing surgery, and that's always the unpredictable part. Then you have to start talking about other things you can do with the non-operative treatment to kind of help promote healing. On the flip side, if you do the surgical piece of it, well, at that point you can go in, clean along the bone where it attaches to back to a bleeding base, and you can actually reattach that hamstring tendon back down onto the bone, and that's going to typically give you more predictable healing results, probably better long-term strength in that area versus non-operative treatment. But the issue just between those two is, from a symptom perspective, there's studies out there that show one versus the other are kind of equivocal. So that's where that decision really can be kind of a difficult decision, which when you're in the partial avulsion realm, that's where it is. If it's a full thickness tear, you fold everything off, that's an easy answer. That needs to be fixed.
Dr. Brandon Seifert's with us, Nebraska Orthopedic Center at Jock Doc Wednesday. Dak Prescott. Surgery again for Dak, his fourth surgery in the last 5 years. He's been a semi-regular Jock Doc topic because of the ankle issues and other issues, the thumb issue in 2022. So he's been a bit wounded from time to time. Dr. Brandon, you look at hockey players, they are more likely to have this hamstring surgery. It's more rare in the NFL that you touched on. How about recovery and rehab? What's ahead of Dak after the surgery?
Yeah, and so there's kind of a variety of rehab protocols out there. I think probably the most common number in terms of when can you get back and play, compete, all that kind of stuff. It's probably somewhere, it is a decent-sized window. It's probably somewhere between about, I'd say, 3.5 up to maybe 5 months, sometimes even longer, just depending on how quickly basically pain goes away and you can rehab hard. So that's kind of the window of return. They do return at a pretty high level after these, especially the position he plays. I think he's got a really high potential return back to playing. Long-term complications here, typically not too significant, other than you might get some scar tissue or might have some irritation around that nerve, and so patients may have a little bit of some numbness and tingling, one, at the incision site, and two, potentially further down, depending if that nerve gets either irritated with surgery and scar tissue, or it just gets a little bit stretched when you're trying to get into that position.
It's Dr. Brandon Seifert with us here, a Jock Doc Wednesday on Hail Varsity Radio. And Dr. Brandon, in terms of long-term, I know you say good return to play rate here for an injury such as this, but long-term, can there be any career shortening? I'm sure that's something the Cowboys are really interested in, as they just signed Dak to a 4-year, $240 million extension this past September, so they need to look out for his long-term health. Is there any concerns there as you start getting up into the upper 30s with Dak?
Yeah, I think it's reasonable to consider those things. Again, you hit it. The age thing's a big factor at this point. You tend to not obviously heal as well as you get a little bit older. He's still pretty young in that spectrum. So I think his healing rates are pretty good. And ultimately, in the end, I did think he'd return quite well after this injury. A lot of it, again, just depends on if he has any kind of nerve issues that show up with it. And then the second part of this is, and I don't know much of his history, is if he's a guy that's kind of had chronic hamstring issues, like, for example, has had a lot of your kind of routine strains that are more like mid-muscle belly. So if he's had some of those in the past, that can be really kind of a plaguing scenario for him, because that's a little bit different area than where that kind of we call the avulsion area happens. And so now you have kind of two different competing areas. And typically the surgically repaired avulsion area does well, but if you've got that chronic hamstring strain issue going on kind of in the mid-muscular belly, those can change kind of career duration and just be kind of nagging injuries.
With 8 games remaining in a 3-6 season, how many other Cowboy players are candidates for hamstring surgery?
There might be several in there we can sign up.
Just had to ask. I mean, run to the surgeon, Dr. Brandon.
What this season does provide, it's an opportunity for former Dana Holgerson product Will Greer. He just got signed to the Cowboys practice squad. Yeah. So where one door closes, another one opens. How about that?
That's an interesting connection.
Yeah, see, it all works out, Dr. Brandon. Dr. Brandon Seifert's with us, Nebraska Orthopedic Center. Jock Doc Wednesday, Dak Prescott is our topic today. Dr. Brandon, always love the knowledge. Thanks for giving us a few minutes today.
Okay, fellas, take care.
Good stuff from Dr. Brandon Seifert, Nebraska Orthopedic Center. And a little Dak news. We will play Steak and a Beer next segment. Nebraska basketball, Fairleigh Dickinson. That line is 27. Dear Lord. All right, we'll wind down a Wednesday. It's Hail Varsity. Subscribe, Hail Varsity YouTube channel.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time at Hail Varsity Roadshow. Friday, we are at Ameristar Council Bluffs Casino. Come find us across the river at Ameris Sportsbook. As we'll be setting up there 4 to 6. Elijah will be in Malibu, getting ready for USC and Nebraska. Fairleigh Dickinson, Nebraska tonight. Tip-off at 7. That line is now 27.5 for the Fighting Freds. I know FDU is 1-2. They're 0-2 away from home. Fellas, you've flipped over basketball quicker than I have. I will not be in attendance tonight. But Nebraska's trying to get some things figured out, not panic about the clunkiness of the offense. All that being said, what do you think of the line? 27.5. Does Nebraska win? Does Nebraska beat somebody this early in the year by damn near 30 points?
Both things can be true. That's a lot of points. Also, Fairleigh Dickinson, not good this year, from what I understand. And it's a small sample size. This is a far cry from the tournament Cinderella we saw a couple years ago. Very, very, very far cry.
Does Nebraska help out, though, and at least...
That is a lot of points, especially considering...
That's a ton.
In a game like this, what do you usually end up doing if you take a 25-point lead late?
You play the backups.
Yes, and it ends up being a little bit closer than you'd think. Yeah. So this would have to be a game that Nebraska's up 30-plus on late for me to feel comfortable.
I don't know. Justice, what say you? Has Nebraska got 4 touchdowns in them tonight to win?
You know, if Nebraska's football team doesn't have 4 touchdowns in them at any given moment to pull out of the hat, I don't think the basketball team has the same kind of offensive firepower. The defense is really good for this team. I just think that they lack continuity and cohesiveness on the offensive side of the basketball, and I think FDU, as bad as they've been to start the season, I think they find a way to cover 27.5 pretty easily.
The line feels so inflated. If this was a 22-point line, I think I might err on the side of Nebraska in an 84-60 type spot. That's kind of what my feel is for this game.
If I was at Ameristar tonight, I could put 100 down on Fairleigh Dickinson in the money line.
Take home $3,000. I don't think Fairleigh Dickinson wins this basketball game. I think it might be a little stressful early. You know what? If I've learned anything, it's that the casinos in Vegas and now in Lincoln and in Omaha and across the great state of Nebraska, they're large and expanding for a reason. They tend to know things. Give me Nebraska. Okay. Steak and a beer. Give me Nebraska, okay. 27.5.
Okay, I'll take Fairleigh Dickinson and the 27.5 points. What about the over-under, 157.5?
157.5? That means my 84-60 line was about
right on.
It's a little under what they're expecting, but I'm not too far off. I'd look I'd look at the under on that, though.
I'd take the under. There's not enough scoring in this game from both sides to get to 157.
But apparently there's enough scoring to win by 27.5 points.
I don't know about that one.
Don't give me the stink eye like that.
I'm happy to get back on the winning track.
This is like whenever you see Arkansas taking on some directional school and they're 25-point favorites. Like, well, Arkansas is not that good. But that being said, it's not like this comes down to the opponent covering the line. It's all about what can Nebraska get done tonight. I'm going to bet that it's the breakout spot for Nebraska. They're going to find some sea legs, get a little more comfortable with that offense. I think they need to kind of establish a bit of a pecking order offensively. Maybe we get a better sense of that tonight.
Round into form for St. Mary's, round into form, so it's a fight against Creighton. Back at you tomorrow on the show. Big thanks, Mike Babcock. Big thanks, Evan Bland and Jeremiah Sirles.